You're listening to Turi Ryder's She Said What podcast. I'm Turi, along with Marci Persky. In this installment, a dangerous cat, a litany of excuses, and packing a little bit too light. A vicious cat ruined your day today? A vicious biting cat?
It wasn't its fault.
Oh,
It's
never
not.
the cat's fault.
It's not.
No, we just happened to
sometimes
try
it
to
is.
pick it up and pet it nicely. It's our fault.
One of my employees at our adoption center, the cat was afraid to come out of its crate. And you never stick your hand in a crate. You let them come out. Instead, this one latched onto her hand and didn't let go, which means I had to send her to urgent care and drive an hour to the adoption center and do young people's work.
As I recall, cat bites are really dangerous. They have
Can be.
every kind of vile, lethal bacteria in the world in their mouths, unlike dogs.
Which is
I'd
why
like to
I
point out.
sent her to urgent care.
So what, do they have to culture the cat's spit or something? What do they have to do?
Nah, they just put her on antibiotics and they draw a circle on her hand that says if it gets red out to here, go to the emergency room.
Oy. How come you can't just culture the cat's spit instead of taking antibiotics?
I think that A, that would be pretty disgusting, and B, you risk the cat biting whoever's culturing its mouth.
No, I think the cat needs to be wrapped in a towel like a sausage at this point.
No, he's a very sweet boy. He was afraid.
Of course he was, so it's not his fault. I know what I was going to tell you. The spousal unit works in the area of politics. So he has a meeting of all the people who do what he does in politics. They have a professional organization, the Professional Evildoers Political Association or something like that. and they're having a big meeting. The meeting is in Puerto Rico. So he has to go to Puerto Rico. So, of course, being the spousal unit, everything is a challenge to see what is the thriftiest way that he can get there, stay there, get around there. It's like a big... If I were there, of course, none of this would be happening because I would say, no, we're not taking that airline and we're not going on the red eye and we're not getting on a city bus. And we are especially not going to go to a 4-day meeting with only a bike bag.
Yeah. What's he gonna rinse his underpants out every night in the sink and hang them out to
think
dry?
he's bringing a full assortment of underwear, but he's like, well, it says in the literature that you can wear shorts, and I can't believe how often I have to say this to people: just because you can doesn't mean you should. And then he said, oh, I see they're having the party, the social is a Hawaiian night, and I had to say to him, do not go anywhere in a Hawaiian shirt. Someone will take a picture of you, and a Hawaiian shirt, since you're not Jimmy Buffett, basically means drunken old white guy. So do not go anywhere in a Hawaiian shirt. And he's looking at me like, oh, I've never thought of any of this before. And then his second thought is, that can't be true. And then I give him this look of it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. Just don't pack a Hawaiian shirt. Just don't do it.
Now that you bring up Hawaii,
Yeah.
we've been back now for almost 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my spousal unit, aka Frankie, best husband on earth, unpacked yesterday.
Because he had more than a bike bag to unpack.
He had a suitcase to unpack,
Right.
But it took him 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's kind of how things roll around our house too. But he's all excited about how little he can take a city bus. It's so nuts. He's taking a red eye, but he doesn't get to check into his Airbnb till 2 p.m, and the conference starts at 8:30. I'm like, what are you going to do? So I think I'll nap for an hour in the airport. Are you crazy? Are you nuts?
And doesn't he understand? I mean, when you're old, or when you reach our what do you call it?
Age?
What's a nice way to say
Age.
it?
Old. Like us. Old.
Our chapter
Yes.
in life.
Oh, that's a nice way. You're right. There is a nicer way of saying it. Yes.
You use your money on comfort.
No.
You spend money for comfort.
No. The way
You
he
do
looks
not
at
take
it.
the red line. You do not take airlines that start with an S that isn't Southwest.
An S or an F. He's taking one that's even worse.
Yeah.
The other airline, that's the color airline.
Mhm.
Yes. Jet puce. My girlfriend and I figured out that airline should be like a Dairy Queen. It should only be open in the summer. Because the minute there's like a drop of snow or rain or a piece of hail, they just shut the
They
whole.
got to de-ice.
They got to shut it all down. Just shut it down. Flight into New York canceled at the last minute. The forecast is for 2 inches of snow. Every other airline is flying. You get a broom out and clear the runway. You could get a what are those little vacuums that you hold in your hand?
Dustbuster.
You can clear the runway with a dustbuster.
Can I just cut in right here?
Yes.
Since I know
Yes.
that a lot of CEOs listen to this podcast.
Both of the
And I
people
would
who
just
listen
like
to
to
this
say
podcast are
CEOs
CEOs.
of airlines.
Okay.
And I would like to say to Southwest, I love your airline, and you can send me tickets to anywhere, and I will go. And to Hawaiian Airlines, sure, I'll go back to Hawaii on your dime.
I'm
Wanted
glad
to get that in
you're
there.
open-minded and open-hearted. I'm glad.
I
And
am.
the other airline that he's flying is named after a covered wagon train, and that's the airline he's flying. The airline that makes you think of little bonnets and oxen and 12 mule teams and a right. That's the airline he's flying, and I don't really care what he packs because I'm convinced that airline never leaves the ground anyway. I just think they have one plane and they push it from one city to another. That's my theory. Or some oxen.
know.
Some oxen tow it from one city to the other. But here's what I was going to tell you about this. So
Yes.
to fly to Puerto Rico on this covered wagon airline site, it says for your international flight, you will need, and I'm like, wait a minute. Puerto Rico is not an international flight. Do
Yeah.
you even know where you're flying? Do
Geography.
you have any idea? Like, are you just going to have the pilot stick his or her finger out the window and go, I think it's over there?
I want to know if everyone has to wear chaps and spurs. I think that would be pretty interesting.
The last time I flew that airline was because they were the only airline that flew to the wrong Manhattan, Kansas when we lived there. And they could put your suitcase on a 40-minute flight between a tiny Kansas town and a slightly larger Kansas town, and your bag would show up looking like it had been flayed with a razor wire or dragged behind the plane down the runway, or else just simply gone. And they did it every time until eventually we just practiced wearing everything we owned.
Well, these so-called budget airlines, they nickel and dime you for everything. Pretty soon they'll start charging for toilet paper. You'll have a little coin thing in the bathroom that you have to stick coins in to get toilet paper.
When enough people pass out from heat exhaustion because they're wearing everything they own so they won't have to pay $40 for a carry-on, they may change their ways. When people just start passing out in the aisles, that
It
may
seems
be.
to be getting worse and worse.
Well, get this. The Conestoga Wagon airline that the spousal unit has a ticket on, they charge you if you want to talk to a person.
Jeez.
And then if you do talk to a person, they hang up on you. So I guess you have to pay twice to talk to a person. And if you want to argue about the fact that they charged you for hanging up on you, I guess that's a third call.
Well, when we flew Hawaiian Airlines, they actually gave us food.
No.
They gave us, I didn't like any of it.
Well,
they gave us
that's
food.
you. But
Yeah.
can I say that there are certain horror stories about airlines that you remember forever and ever and ever because they're so awful?
You know what? Mine's more trains. I think
Oh.
I've taken more trains than airlines.
Ah.
But yes, I have many train horror stories.
So the horror, but some you remember and some you don't. Like someone will say, "Do you remember that time that XYZ airline went into a coral reef and they found the people half eaten by fish?" You'd be like, "I don't remember that at all." But then there'll be other ones where you think, "Oh, remember that time where the half of the cabin peeled away and people got sucked into the engine and Cuisinarted? Remember that?" And that became like my total fear. Now I try to figure out where can I sit where if I'm sucked out of the plane, I just die of falling.
I always try to get seats at the emergency exit
That's
so
over
I can be the first one out.
Anyway, so the spousal unit,
Yes.
this is like the lab experiment of if there's nobody telling him that is completely insane, you actually could check into your Airbnb in such a way that you don't have to sleep in the airport for 4 hours to save yourself whatever the Airbnb would cost for the extra day. I mean, this is what happens if I'm just not there at all. The most influence I can possibly hope to have is to keep him from wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
By taking it out of the suitcase before he leaves.
I am going to look through that bike bag. What suitcase? The bike bag. Remember, he's very proud of himself.
That's right.
And
That's
messenger bag. And all day long, all I've heard all day, and all yesterday was, I got to pack. And finally at dinner, I said, what do you have to pack? It's a bike bag. What can you possibly be packing in there that you actually have to think about? You would think that he was launching a NASA space shuttle where every half ounce that you propel into orbit costs $1 zillion. No.
Yeah, I'm like the opposite. When I pack everything I own, literally.
I know
and then
you do.
Use like a couple things and then bring it all home and it's clean.
Yeah.
I had to buy a new suitcase because I couldn't fit all my clothes into it. The old one.
I think it's his version of the Great British Baking Show. This is the Great Spousal Unit Packing Challenge. And part of me wants to suspend the credit card so that when he does realize that he doesn't have any toothpaste or enough underwear, he's just screwed.
Turn him inside out.
I won't do it, though.
Then he doesn't have to pay for a laundromat. What if he spills something, though, on his shirt?
You're talking about the guy who doesn't notice when I put my shirt on backwards. Oh, and he's also trying to figure out how not to have to spend any money on transportation. But he's busy trying to figure out how he can make it to the convention center by just walking along some pedestrian path. And I said,
I sure they have Ubers.
Well, yeah, I've mentioned that too. Oh my gosh, we took an Uber the other day.
Oh no.
That does not happen in our household. My girlfriend was getting a big fancy award for her career in television.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it is hot. I am not getting on public transit in my cocktail hour attire. So get out the Uber app and use it. And he actually tried to flip back and forth between the Uber and the Lyft app to save, and it served him right. By the time he figured out how to use the other app, the price had equalized. Right. Ha. But then going home, I said I would ride the bus. And it only took 40 minutes of standing for the bus to come. They have these new bus stops with these signs where it's not an electric sign. It's like a roller, like a window shade, only it rolls from ad to ad. And it makes this horrible sound. And then it stops and then it goes. And you're sitting there. You're stuck in this little plexiglass cube with this weird window shade thing going. It was all I could do not to pull out the mobile phone and call an Uber or a Lyft.
When I used to have to take the 147 express bus from downtown to Chicago up to the Rogers Park, my biggest problem was eye contact. For some reason, I would always lock eyes with the strangest person on the bus, usually some whacked out guy who would decide that that's permission for him to come and talk to me. Always, without fail. And I can't help it because I'm curious, so I have to look at people, especially strange people. Who probably are looking at me because they think I'm strange.
Yes, they are. So why no dark glasses for you?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe because it was midnight.
Doesn't matter. There's this one lifeguard at the pool in the park where I swim. Two things bother me. He wears dark glasses all the time. It's an indoor pool. Dude, for what reason? There is no sun here. Why the dark glasses?
And he wants to be Jack Nicholson.
Could be. Five easy laps. And then the other thing is, all the other guards give you all the time of lap swimming. But this guy always gets everybody out of the pool 2 minutes before you have to get out of the pool. And I'm like,
2 whole minutes.
Yeah, that's a whole 2 laps. That's 2 laps I could be doing that he begrudges me. And anytime that he's guarding, I get 2 fewer laps because of him. That's probably 20 pounds a year that I am not losing because of him and his...
pounds a year.
Probably. And I resent it. If you can forgive a vicious cat, I can hold a grudge against a lazy lifeguard. I think that's fair. If you've made it this far, chances are you've been enjoying Turi Ryder's She Said What podcast, in which case you might also like my book, She Said What, A Life on the Air. You can find that at your neighborhood independent bookstore or on Amazon. Marci and I really appreciate your good reviews wherever you care to leave them. Your kind words help the podcast grow. Thanks.